Esta mañana el embajador William Duncan tuvo una presentación pública en la que habló mucho sobre El Salvador y los temas realmente son sumamente importantes porque nos deja ver que definitivamente ya cambió esa perspectiva que el gobierno de Estados Unidos tenía respecto a El Salvador. Esa postura que se había impuesto debido a que pues ya conocemos quién era la encargada de negocios anterior en El Salvador, que pues la mandaron a Colombia, y ahora por fin, una vez definido pues un embajador ya de forma definitiva para el país, ahora conocemos la postura que este embajador está dando de El Salvador frente a su gobierno. Muy importante lo que dijo esta mañana y primero pues hizo hincapié en la seguridad. Dijo que El Salvador no solamente es un régimen de excepción, sino que hay muchísimas cosas interesantes, en sus propias palabras, que están sucediendo en el país. Y sobre todo que los salvadoreños se sienten muy seguros y que anteriormente nunca habían tenido la paz de poder caminar y que ahora eso sí se tiene en El Salvador. Veamos esta primera parte respecto a lo que dijo el embajador William Duncan.
I would disagree with a little bit with the implication that gangs were already in decline when President Bukele took over, and that would not be the perception of the average Salvadoran. And I think we need to recognize that part of his astonishing popularity, he polls around 85%, and his public security policy polls at 96%. We need to recognize that there's something there. I have said publicly, and I will keep on saying, that government has at least two obligations. One is to provide public security, and the other is to provide due process of law. It's not an either-or choice, and it need not be an either-or choice. Nevertheless, look at the demographics of El Salvador. Look at the number of people in El Salvador, which is far greater than half of the population, who have never in their lives known a time when you could walk the streets in safety. And now they can. And think about what that means to them. And that's what explains those polling numbers. And I think we have to reckon with that, and we have to reckon with the failures of previous governments in El Salvador, both in terms of governance and public security. What's happening today in El Salvador has an historical context. And if we fail to understand that, then we are not going to be the kind of partners for El Salvador that I think we need to be.
En la segunda parte hace hincapié de hecho en muchos más temas y algo que llama poderosísimamente la atención es que se da cuenta de las ambiciones, en el buen término de la palabra, que tiene El Salvador, que tiene el gobierno de El Salvador para llevar desarrollo económico a todo el país. Y pues lo menciona específicamente y de hecho incluso habla del tema migratorio y pone sobre la mesa herramientas poderosas que en este momento El Salvador está utilizando para migración legal y que pues este gobierno ha impulsado grandemente y hace reconocimiento al respecto. Por otra parte, de verdad que nos echa, como decimos los salvadoreños, nos echa flores respecto a el trabajo que hacen los salvadoreños, la fuerza laboral que representa El Salvador en Estados Unidos. Hace una referencia increíble respecto a todo este esfuerzo que hacen nuestros compatriotas ahí en Estados Unidos y menciona que es sumamente importante que Estados Unidos se convierta en ese socio pues, que debe de apoyar a El Salvador como El Salvador apoya a Estados Unidos. Entonces debe convertirse en algo mutuo y él lo menciona en esta presentación que realiza. De verdad que me he quedado un poco corto de las palabras, así que mejor veamos lo que el embajador William Duncan dice en esta segunda parte.
There's a lot more going on in El Salvador than a state of exception. I understand why that's captured so much of the news, but I think we're dealing with a government there that's also got some extremely ambitious and interesting plans for economic development in the country. They believe that they can leapfrog in terms of development using digitalization, using high tech, moving beyond what have traditionally been the important sectors for foreign direct investment in the country. And I think those extremely ambitious plans that they have are worth recognizing. And I think there are areas where we can collaborate. And frankly, I think there's a lot more opportunity for the U.S. private sector in El Salvador than is presently realized. I said earlier, I travel widely in El Salvador. I talk to people in the government. I talk to farmers in the fields, literally. I was just out Friday doing that. I haven't met anybody yet who is not happy about the current state of public security in the country, even those people who have reservations about the way it's being done recognize that this has been a game changer for El Salvador. For my part, I think we miss the point when we always start off talking about migration. We need to start off talking about education, investment, economic development, effective governance, public security, all of the things that you and I want here at home in the United States. It's the same thing Salvadorans want in El Salvador, I think. And that's what we need to be talking about, and that's where we need to be engaging. And I want to, one more time, we have an enormously important tool at our disposal in each of these countries, the three Northern Central American countries, and that is the H-2 visa program. And we are underutilizing that tool. El Salvador has one of the best workforces in the world, bar none. If you don't believe me, walk out of this building and walk around the Washington metropolitan area and see what Salvadorans have done in this country. 70% of the Salvadoran workforce is in the informal sector. They're looking for jobs. We need seasonal agricultural workers in the United States. We need tens of thousands more every year. We have to start encouraging U.S. agricultural employers to look to El Salvador. We have unique arrangements in these countries where USAID is working closely with the host governments to screen the workers, effectively doing the work of private sector recruiters in places like Mexico. There is an enormous advantage here. The actual cost of bringing a worker from El Salvador to the United States is not really very much more than bringing one for Mexico. And I could bore you by explaining the details because I used to be the consul general in Monterrey, Mexico, where we did 61% of all the H visas in the world. I'm telling you right now, we are failing to get the word out, and I'm going to do my part to change that. But there are plenty of Salvadorans who want to come up here and work seasonally. And why is that so important? It's important because it's a legal pathway. That's not why it's important, really. It's really important because those workers go back banked for the first time in their lives. They go back with their earnings in their hands. For them, that's capital. They're going to invest it. I do not know when El Salvador is going to put a man or a woman on the moon, but I know this. When that first Salvadoran astronaut gets to the moon, they will open a business. Because that's what Salvadorans do. And if we can get these H-2 workers in the circuit and going back with their earnings, they are going to open small businesses, and they're already doing it. I meet them. And that's going to create 1, 2, 3, 4 jobs over time. That's an enormous tractor for the Salvadoran economy. And we need to make sure that we're taking advantage of it and that Salvadorans are taking advantage of it.
Y ahí lo tienen, como lo escucharon. De hecho, si El Salvador logra poner un hombre, un astronauta, hombre o mujer en la luna, lo primero que haríamos sería poner un negocio. Y es totalmente cierto, esa es la naturaleza de los salvadoreños, poder salir adelante y poder hacer negocios. Es lo que queremos. De hecho, el presidente Nayib Bukele se los ha dicho en repetidas ocasiones. No queremos ayuda, no queremos pedirles y estar siempre extendiendo la mano para que siempre nos estén ayudando. Lo que queremos es hacer negocios, es respeto. Únicamente pedimos respeto y el espacio necesario para poder desarrollarnos, para poder hacer negocios y para poder trabajar, que es lo mejor que podemos hacer los salvadoreños, es lo mejor que sabemos hacer, salir adelante independientemente de la situación. Y si la situación económica y de seguridad en este país ahora florece y es mucho más atractiva, no solo para los salvadoreños, sino que para inversionistas extranjeros, definitivamente este país va a caminar por el mejor rumbo posible. Déjenme en sus comentarios qué opinan al respecto y sigamos trabajando para que El Salvador sea un país cada vez mejor.